Hey, folks, welcome back to the Living in the Virtue of Your Strengths podcast. My name is Matt Ingold. I'm a certified Catholic coach with Metanoia Catholic and a certified CliftonStrengths coach as well. And today on this podcast, we explore not only what the themes are, those signature themes in Clifton Strengths, but how to live them out virtuously in ways that make a contribution to God's kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. We want to learn how to tame our strengths, and we look at the root of whether these strengths in our lives show up as strengths or weaknesses, show up as virtues or vices based on the mindsets that are behind them. So that lays a little bit of a backdrop to our podcast. We're exploring how we live virtuously in our strengths. And go ahead and share my screen, because today we are asking, how does the maximizer live virtuously in their strengths? My coveted strength, I like to tell people. I have holy envy of maximizers, and not a whole lot of us on the call have high maximizer, but I think that's okay, because if everybody was a maximizer, boy, oh boy, there'd be a lot of juice squeezing going on. More on that in the call. But Sean, you're number 7 here. Excited to have you as the top maximizer on our call today. And you're always making a great contribution, but that's what maximizers do. Okay, we're going to be focusing here again on the maximizer talents, asking the question, what drives the person with maximizer? Where do they desire to rest? Where can they be? Where all of a sudden they're resting in, they're so happy. What is the virtuous, vicious ways that maximizer can show up, the virtuous or vicious ways that it can show up? And then what are the mindsets behind it? We see words become flesh. And so the way that we show up in our habits, which Clifton Strengths are, they're putting, the talent themes are an expression of habitual ways of thinking, feeling, and acting that can be applied productively. All right, so when we think of it that way, these are habits. These are things that are showing up in our behaviors, so the way we think, feel, and act. All right, and the way that we think, feel, and act often stems from our thoughts, or near all the time, it stems from our thoughts. That's really where it starts to, our actions, our behaviors, those habits originate in the thoughts. So what are the thoughts that we're thinking? Because they're going to incline us whether or not we show virtuously or viciously. Okay, can't wait to get into this. Let's go. All right, maximizer. Go into our baseball card that we get from Gallup to give a high-level overview of maximizer. This is what the maximizer looks like. So they say, I am committed to excellence. I will, what are they doing? I will focus on what is strong and manage around what is weak. I bring, what's their contribution? A quality orientation. I need, what's that requirement? They need to show up most effortlessly in their best self, in their place of contribution. I need quality to be valued as much as quantity. I love, what do they value? A maximum return on investments, a max ROI. I hate, again, revealing what they value. An obsession with weakness fixing. The metaphor image that we get is good to great, or good, better, best. And that barrier label they get is picky or never satisfied. Okay, so that's our high-level overview. Let's jump into our word picture. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can see all this, but I'll explain it to everybody that's just listening on the podcast. Okay, so the first thing I have is this plus signs, little plus signs that are just peppered all over this graphic, because that's what the maximizer does. They are adding. Often they are incremental additions that they are making, but they are making additions. And there's great satisfaction in just a little bit of progress, getting a little bit more juice out of the lemon. That's the other image that I have here. I've got an image of a hand squeezing a lemon and the juice dripping out into the cup. The maximizer is the person that says there's always a little bit more juice to get out of this lemon. Now I joke and I say the maximizer developer combination will say, the developer will ask, hey, let's work on making bigger lemons. And then the maximizer says, let's work on squeezing those bigger lemons. So the developer always wants to increase the resources that are available. And the maximizer just wants to use whatever resources are there and get the most out of them. What's the most judicious use of those resources? Okay. I also think of a maximizer, somebody that's just making constant little tweaks. And they may seem somewhat obscure, but they can often have a very big impact. So I think of somebody that's even putting Facebook ads, or these people that are marketing ads people, they're just constantly experimenting with little tweaks to the ads. They enjoy the A/B testing, because if they can get 1 percentage point higher, or a fraction of a percentage point higher on their click-through rate or their open rate, they know that that is getting more juice out of that lemon. Here I have an image of a hand on a switchboard, right? So think of somebody that is mixing a track or something like that for a demo track for somebody. And they have all the different controls, all the different dials there. And what are they doing? They're trying to maximize the beauty and the harmonies that are in there, and the balance of the instruments. And they're just making these subtle little tweaks all throughout. It's kind of that maximizer ideology. There's always one little tweak that you can make. Maximizers, I see, often have ideas that on ways that you can just increase the potential a little bit more. And so when you see high strategic thinking paired with that maximizer being an influencer domain, all right, which seeks to, influencer domains, remember, they seek to rest in the movement of other people, whether that's an emotional movement or a physical movement. They are looking to rest in somebody else moving in some capacity. So the maximizer here on its own wants to rest in moving somebody else to a higher potential. Paired with that strategic thinking, though, they can have a lot of ideas on how you can move somebody to higher potential. And they have a way of seeing potential. I have a set of eyes that are looking at just a little compass that's pointed towards potential. They see potential in a person, in a business, in a business model. They even the way that the resources can be used better to maximize, draw out more of that potential. And then finally, I have an image here of one of those little, almost like a chart that's kind of has the arrows swooping up, right, in the curve upwards, like we're increasing here. And I've got an image of a team and time and money. Again, resources. How do we get the most potential out of our money, get the most potential out of our team? How do we get the most potential out of our time? How are we maxing our return on our investment, our ROI? All right. That's what I got for maximizer right now. Is there what else can we add to this image? Sean, I'm going to lean on you. I know you're high ideation, so you've got lots of this, but you're also high maximizer. So put you on the spot here, Sean. What can you add to this image?
Gosh. This is you've covered it very well. The only thing that I'm noticing is like how you can maximize, like in the atmosphere, the environment, or the location, the nuances of what else is going on, and I don't really know how you'd capture that unless it's like staging or something like that. I'm not really sure, but no, you captured it. And I will be honest, I came to this call very fatigued, and you have encouraged me. I've gotten so excited just by your presentation so far. So yeah, I want to know more about this, Matt.
That's maximizer is like my 28. So like this is good. My highest influencer theme is an activator at 14. So I do enjoy seeing the smile on your face and knowing that you're being energized by the presentation here as well. Awesome. Corey.
Hi. So what I thought about is as a photographer and the software, or, just even when we take the pictures on our phone, how we're always kind of could tweak it just a little bit more to draw out those amazing colors or contrast or sharpness, and just to, maximize the light there. Anyway. Okay.
So like just the enhancements that you get in those different applications. Awesome, Corey. Great. Sean, I'm curious, like give you something to think about. You don't have to come right back on, but I'd love to hear how your maximizer shows up, and if there's any examples from the work that you've done on your maximizer showing up. Something I could say that I with Virtual Catholic Conference, one of my business partners, Ryan Foley, he is a high maximizer. I think it's his 2, something around there. It might be his 1 or 2, but I would get done building the conferences, and then I would invite Ryan in, and Ryan would always have small little tweaks that he would want to make. And so at first I would be a little bit annoyed by this because my achiever wanted to just check the box and for it to be done. And so, but I also couldn't deny that the tweaks he was suggesting were optimal tweaks. There were things that really were going to improve the user experience or improve conversions. And so what I started to do was make a little bit more space for his maximizer to show up. And I would prepare to have everything done a little bit ahead of time so that he could come in and I could invite that maximizer to come in, knowing that he was going to have all these ideas, but he wasn't necessarily going to be the hands that actually went and actually got it done. But he was going to certainly inspire me to be the hands in my high executor things to go forward and get those things done. Leslie, I see your hand up.
Yeah. So, okay. So in your graphic there, I was thinking, well, okay, maximizer's 32 for me. And at one time I thought it tested higher, but it is definitely not me because I see a lot of details in this, which just seemed very painful. But until you hit potential. And then I went, yes. And also, I'm really glad you defined the difference between maximizer and developer, because I think that really helps clarify for me. I'm more developer for sure. But potential when it comes to people, seeing the things that people can offer, just seeing the potential in them and wanting to develop that. That's huge for me, huge. So there's my little 32
And
maximizer.
that's a great insight, Leslie. Oftentimes that, again, developer and which is a relationship theme and maximizer, they can look similar, but again, that maximizer is not looking to come alongside and really be with the person for the long haul the way that developer really wants to accompany, really want to be coming alongside and accompanying that person. And they want to help them improve their skills that they have, not just max the ones that they already have. It's a subtle difference, but it's still a difference. I like that analogy of developer wants to make bigger lemons, maximizer wants to squeeze all the juice out of them. Okay. Sean, see your hands up.
Yes. One of the things that you said, Matt, that I really think is important, and that is user experience. I think that for me, when I read the notes on what a maximizer, I had to remember what it was. And one of the things is acquire the knowledge, and we always want to help other people have a nice experience. So that user, the impact of the user and the ease of use, and the to make it seem seamless for them because of these other points that have been taken care of. Now, I may be hitting some of my other strengths, but when I read the maximizer thing, that user experience is really important. The other thing that Corey mentioned regarding photography, when I study photography, and every once in a while, I'm always tweaking, and my instructor would go, "It's good enough." Because I was always like, if I could just get in there, you know. So I learned a lot in that experience. But anyway, I wanted to reference what you said about user experience, because that's what or the details are enhancing that.
Okay. How does that land with you as a number 7 maximizer? Sean, it's good enough.
I have to walk away slowly. It never feels good enough. You know, but I've learned to do that, you know, through experience and through adapting and through maturing, whatever. I've learned to be able to go hands off, you know, timer's up, put your pencil down, you know, step away from the counter, you know. And so, but in my mind, I'm already thinking about, if I do this again, I will bring these. I always debrief. I always want to know, how could it have been better? What could we have done? And I really love the team approach, and also enhancing other people's strengths or skills or attitude, mindset, whatever enhances their experience. I'm always wanting to know how we can come forward and make that experience better for them.
Interesting. Always want to know how we can come forward and make that experience better for them. Justin, I want to put you on deck to be able to come on here and kind of share some of your insights. You always got, I know you've got a depth of knowledge just from exploring these strengths, and your intellection is always spinning on this stuff. But Sean, one of the other questions I I have to use is you said that because again, we're talking about taming these strengths, and you recognize there's a value, it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a value of hitting a point where you, even though you don't believe that it's good enough, you still step away and you move forward. Is that accurate? And if so, tell me a little bit more about that.
Oh, yes, yes. I mean, if you're up against the clock or the plane's going to leave without you, you know what I mean? There's always a deadline. There's always, the curtain's going to pull back. The dinner's going to be served, whatever it is, there's always a timeline that I have no control over. I can do everything up to it, and support my team or, the folks that I'm working with, that I'm on their team to make it an enjoyable experience for the team as well as the participants. But that's where I go into making my notes that if I'm ever in this situation again, I want to be prepared for whatever it is that I noticed, whether, that's it. But I think that with time and practice and seasoning, we can learn how to step away and, just honor the experience for what it is.
Got it. Step away, honor that experience. Love it. Thank you, Sean. Justin, any notes before we press on here, man?
Yeah, no, I mean, the couple things I'm going to say is, it didn't occur to me before, but as you were going through the definition of maximizer, it's kind of the definition of what strengths work is itself. And I think that's why this one tends to resonate with a lot of people in the strengths community, whether they have it or not. It's because deep down, we, in some way, shape, or form, appreciate what maximizer tries to do, because in a sense, that's a lot what the concept of strengths is trying to do as a whole. And I think Sean's point about the way she put it as enhancing the user experience, I think really hits it dead on, because unlike developer, where you're trying to work with the person to enhance them as a person in some way, shape, or form, for the maximizer, it's really pushing everyone along in a direction that leads to a better outcome. And so it's that outcome focus, but moving everyone in that direction so that they can see that, yes, we did great, but if we can just go another 1/10 of a mile, it's going to be even that much better. Trust me, the little bit of pain now is going to be worth that much more in the end, and you'll forget about it, and everyone will be that much happier. And yeah, there's Sean pointed out, there's that danger of reaching one of those kind of asymptotes where you're continually getting closer and closer to a line that you'll never actually hit, and then you start getting diminishing returns. And I think for the folks with maximizer, it's understanding where that line of diminishing returns is, that the more I push for something better, the more I'm worsening the user experience, and just calibrating to that line, which is what they're always in the end trying to do, because in the end they don't want to improve something and make it worse, because then they realize they've gone too far.
Yeah, Justin, I love that insight about there is a point of diminishing returns, or a point where the juice isn't worth the squeeze, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, I think that might even be a triggering phrase for maximizer. It's like, no, it's always worth the squeeze. Like, just give it a little bit more, because they're just motivated by getting a little bit more out of it. But I think what you just shared there, those diminishing returns, could be some of those things that the way that the maximizer can prudently start to discern whether it's time to push a little bit more or kind of step away. And as somebody that's high responsibility, being on teams with maximizers, it can often be a sharpening experience for me, because I want to take that psychological ownership of whatever project is being put in front of me. And so the maximizer can always have little enhancements, and then I want to own delivering those enhancements. And I've gotten myself into trouble by not guarding really, or being my pride really getting me to a place where I take on things that are just beyond my ability to actually deliver, even though I think they look awesome, and I want to be able to say, great idea, I got it over here, because it gives me such pleasure as high responsibility. You can see how maximizers, or the person high, that's another podcast, person high responsibility paired with a maximizer. will want to, it could be a good combination. It really could be a good combination. It worked well for me and my teammate. Sean, I see your hands up here. And then
Yeah.
you can.
Yeah. Real quick, for me, also the takeaway is utilizing the resources of people and things in the best way. And the other thing is, if you squeeze a lemon too long, it gets bitter.
Interesting.
So that's a little, that was when you guys were just talking. I thought about that. If it goes too far, just like he said, just up to the line of demarcation, just right there. If you go too far, it can get bitter or something else. So anyway, that was my share.
Interesting. Jane. Make lemonade with that.
It's interesting what you said earlier about, it's a good thing there's not that many maximizers on this call, because you said there really needs only to be one maximizer in the team. And it just kind of reminds me, same thing with an activator, right? Like we just really need one activator to get us going. But I was going to say about contributions, because mine's 28. But my achiever is number 5. And I remember when I was working on a team and we got a new boss, and this, I want to call her and like, I need you to get your strengths. I really think you have maximizer, just thinking of how she got the team going. And she's always talking about using the resources to the nth degree. And yeah, that squeezing of that lemon of how can we do it better? But for me as the achiever, I loved the report of seeing the progress of how are we achieving better and better. This quarter we did this, and then this quarter we did this, and now we're getting this alignment. And it motivated me. And it was funny. I used to joke with her, and I'd always say, I'm your racehorse. Just, get me out on the track. And she's like, I know, pull back, wait for it, because she wanted to improve the system before we were going. And I just wanted to get it done, right? Achiever. But it's just kind of interesting how the two, all of the strengths, if you know the strengths and you can be in a space, which is what I think Clifton really, their intention is to build the team so that everyone has their proper space at the table. And then we can all thrive, and everyone can just feel, the relationship builders can feel like they've connected, the executors can feel like they've gotten things done. The influencers can see where they're being moved forward, and the strategic thinkers can think about what needs to be done next or whatever. It's just a beautiful system. So thank you for
everybody
letting me
coming
share.
together and making their contribution. And that is certainly, you nailed it. And I think I love how Justin even tied it into the overall promise of CliftonStrengths, and the aim of CliftonStrengths is getting people to live in their places, like their optimal places of giftedness on the team. Let's jump into this is my stab here, folks. So if I ask a question, what is the maximizer seeking? What's their motivation? Where do they want to rest? I believe it's reaching full potential, the fullness of potential. And it's not just their own reaching the full potential. Remember, it's an influencer theme. So it's going outside, and it's desiring to inspire other people to go and see their full potential. And there's something that's interesting, I think, with the maximizer is because you could say that it's like there's an element of strategic thinking that's here, because they do have to sell people on a vision, and it's a bit of a futuristic vision that's there. It's looking certainly at the present potential or the present resources that are available, but they do see a configuration of those present resources in an optimal way, almost similar to a ranger in this sense. But here it's getting people inspired to pursue that vision together. So I say maximizer, one of the things that I love about that is they're good stewards. It seems like a maximizer is a good steward, meaning they're looking at the resources they have, and a good steward, they're just maximizing the use of those things, optimizing the use of those things. But what else here? How does this, Is there anything else that we could add to this? Motivation, reaching full potential for an organization, for a family, for a business, for your prayer life, whatever it is, the maximizer wants to get it to its full potential. Arranger, not ranger, arranger. Yeah, I think that might have been it. So I see a little bit of arranger, not the arranger talent. That's what I meant by that, Corey. not the New York Rangers. Okay. All right, folks. Anything else to add to this before we jump into our scripture reading? Or have we squeezed all the juice there is to squeeze out of this lemon? Okay. All right. I think we did a great job up front here. Let's jump into our scripture reference. Okay, so we start to pivot our conversation here. We've been talking about motivation and what it does and how maximizer shows up. Now the scripture starts to inform us in how we can live this more virtuously. And we pull our scripture from Numbers. I actually pulled this right from the book Living in Your Strengths Catholic Edition, which has some great scripture references to go along with each one of the talent themes. Here we draw from Numbers 18, chapter 18, verse 29. From all the gifts that you receive and from the best parts, you are to consecrate to the Lord your own full contribution. Okay, so as we look to this scripture, from all the gifts that you receive and from the best parts, you are to consecrate to the Lord your own full contribution. I must say, confess, I didn't look into the context of this reading, but knowing that it's in Numbers, it's part of that Pentateuch, the original, the 5 books at the beginning of the Bible. I'm putting myself in the frame of the Jews of the Old Testament, right? And consecrate to the Lord your own full contribution. I even think back to some sort of a sacrifice that is being offered. But that full contribution is what stands out to me here. And I think about, I was sharing earlier before we got on the call with some of you, I think of the story of Cain and Abel, right? Where God looks favorably for some reason, we don't know why, but he looks favorably on Abel's offering, but he does not look favorably on Cain's offering for some reason. And my speculation here, mine goes, well, I wonder if there was something lacking in Cain's contribution. It was not a full contribution that's there. So there's something here that even appeals to justice. The word justice comes to mind for me as well as I think about this. It is just to give God that full contribution. I mean, it's just to give God our whole life. It's just to give God everything that he has given back to us. And which is why it's so incredible that the only thing, like, even if we gave God our whole lives, it still wouldn't be enough, because like God is infinite, we are finite, right? Yet through his grace and through the merits of Christ, we're able to give God an offering that is pleasing. And so here, that full contribution, I think of even all of our gifts, all of our talents being laid on the altar, and the person that's the maximizer looks at somebody that may have an offering like Cain's, perhaps, that doesn't have everything on the table. And they want to go to that person. They want to say, you've got so much more to give. Why are you holding it back? You know, is there fear that's there? Is there just an ingratitude that's there? What's the reason? Let's get the fullness of the offering on the table. How is this landing with each of you? What are some thoughts? I see some head nods. And I love how it's from all the gifts that you receive, right? Because when you're giving a gift to the king, you would always give your whole life, your will, because everything in the kingdom already belonged to the king. It was almost a diss to the king if you gave the king a gift, because it implied that it wasn't his to begin with. But here there's something that you have to offer. These gifts that you've received from the king, you're giving them back, and you're giving them back with increase, like we see in the parable of the talents. There's an expectation that the king gives us gifts, but then we return them to him with increase. Sean, hands up.
Yes, this is beautiful. The concept of the gifts that we receive And of course, I love the, from the best parts, because you don't want to slight or cheapen the gifts that you've received. And knowing that the gifts we receive, from the Lord, and to come forward in fullness. The contribution is in fullness. It's not slighted. It's not cheapened. It's not just thrown together. There was, again, the word that comes up a lot is honor to me. And as I'm looking at this, it's like standing in my honor and of who I was gifted to be, created to be, but also honoring the other people who they were created to be. And so anyway, the scripture brings those thoughts to mind.
That's incredible. Something that's interesting here too is that Jane just typed in, this scripture is in reference to the tithes that are meant to be presented to the Levites. They were the priestly class or the priestly tribe. And so what are they doing with these tithes? These priests are offering them up to the Lord. And I think about the fulfillment of the sacrifice of the Mass now, where the Lord again gives us the gifts of himself. But we present what we've got. We present the bread and the wine, but then he comes and he transforms it. He transubstantiates it into something that is actually worthy of being offered to the Father, the very body and blood of the Son. You want to talk about maximizing the potential of something that is here, and all that we're invited to do is just give from our best parts our full contribution. And then perhaps the thought is, well, if we do that, then we're going to be depleted. But that's not the way that God works. He takes it and he makes it so that it's not depleted, it's completed, right? It's brought to a fullness, a transformation. There's a divinization that's taking place, an elevation, a metanoia, right? A change of mind, a putting on the mind of Christ. All this amazing stuff. Okay. Any other thoughts here on this? Thank you for that, Jane. Any other thoughts on this, folks? Corey.
Okay, help me out here with when John Paul II, how he says the only way that we fully know ourselves or God's will is when we give ourselves away to be that gift of self. So as you were saying that about when we give God our best parts, it's not a depletion, it's a completion. It reminded me of that John Paul II is the only way we know ourselves really is when we give ourselves away.
Yes, that Gaudium et Spes, he's constantly, that Vatican II document, he's always quoting that man cannot know himself except through the sincere gift of self. And so there's a through the giving, through the contribution, and giving of your best parts, that sincere gift, it's your best parts that you're giving, that full contribution that you come to know who you are. That's an amazing insight here. Thank you for sharing that, Corey. I didn't make that connection as well, but we can see here again, more evidence to the contrary that giving gives us to a place of depletion. But no, when we give and we truly give it to the Lord, he completes it, brings it to completion. Okay. All right, let's jump a little bit further now into our virtuous side of things. Okay, so again, when we start our conversation here, we're always going back to, if you want to go back to our earlier podcast episodes 1 through 5, we talked about John Paul II's personalism and a Catholic anthropology. That's where we ground our conversation on virtue stuff, something being good versus evil. Okay, so we know that from that Catholic anthropology, we're not meant to be alone. We're meant to be in communion. So these interdependent relationships, that is something that is, we can look at that and we can say, when maximizer is being lived out interdependently, right? Leaning on one another and contributing amongst one another, there's a virtuous living out in that, versus when it's being lived out viciously, it could go independent, dependent, or codependent. So what does maximizer look like when it's lived out interdependently, virtuously? Maximizer invites others to make a gift of their full potential and strive for that excellence. Striving for that excellence. I think of even St. Paul saying, run the race as if to win, right? Striving for that excellence. And even that word virtue, virtuoso, it means excellence. And so we're inviting people to live more excellently, to live more virtuously on that interdependent side. And it's always an invitation, because when we don't invite, when we impose, we take away freedom, and then we're violating the dignity of the person at that point. It's not loving. It's something that leads more to the vicious side of things. Okay, so let's look at that over there. Leading to independence. That's where others become a means to maximize their own potential. All right, so if the maximizer is looking for others as a means to maximize their potential, not others as a means to maximize others' potential, but the maximizer, like, you're here to serve my potential, me maximizing my potential, the potential of my company, the potential of my growth, the potential of my ego or my fame. That's where maximizer can go independent. It's dismissive of the other person. Independence doesn't see the other person. They only see their own ego. Okay. Leads to dependence. This is where others need to maximize their potential so that I, the maximizer, can feel a certain way. Okay. So this is, again, where we often need other people to act, think, or feel a certain way in order for us to feel a certain way, to have that security. Maximizer might feel insecure when other people aren't maxing their potential, or they might feel frustrated when somebody's not maximizing their potential. But where does frustration come from? Comes from our thoughts. Doesn't mean we can't look at somebody that is just sitting on the couch and eating potato chips and smoking pot all day long, and be and see the injustice of that, and acknowledge the injustice of that, the injustice in a life that is being wasted, and it's not being presented back to God with this potential for increase. Yes, there might be just anger that's associated with that, but we need to be able to separate somebody else's actions from how we choose to how we feel. Otherwise, we're going to become very manipulative at that point. Okay, and then finally, leads to codependence. I have a simple phrase here: accommodating failure to launch. And so the image I have in mind is the maximizer that goes out and gives the rah, rah, rah speech, and they feel really good, and everybody nods their head, goes along, and then nothing happens. It's the seed that falls on shallow soil, and everybody's like, huzzah, let's do it. And then there's no accompaniment, there's no real continuity that's there. There's no sincere desire to change in the other person, or and the maximizer is not as interested whether they're really sincere or not. Again, what happens in this place of codependence? Nobody's moving, nobody's really seen, and there's a shallow relationship at best, but there's no growth on either side of the relationship. Okay, how is this landing with people on the call? Where are you seeing perhaps your maximizer going interdependent, that virtuous way? Where are you seeing it going independent? Where are you seeing it perhaps being dependent? Maybe you find, or even in a place where it's like accommodating a failure to launch. I remember a couple of years ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, reaching out to my bishop. I was the Bishop of Albany, Bishop Scharfenberger, and had a great relationship with him. And I wanted to get out and start speaking more for like men's conferences and things like that. And I remember reaching out to him and asking him for an endorsement. And he said, Matt, I'll always remember this. He goes, Matt, I'm happy to give you an endorsement, but I want to tell you also, I don't need another person coming into my diocese, getting everybody all fired up, and then leaving, and there being nothing left behind. And I was like, oh man, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Like, he's looking for somebody that can light the fire, but somebody that can move people into action. There's some sort of accountability. It's not that there's no value in that, because certainly people can be inspired and they can go and do amazing things from somebody coming through, but he wanted to see somebody that was going to make the ongoing investments in his diocese and maximize his diocese, not just somebody that was going to inspire, almost like I don't need one of those codependent maximizers. They feel good, they show up, they collect their check, and then they move on to the next diocese. All right. Didn't mean to upset anybody that's a Catholic speaker and that's what they do for a living. Nonetheless, this is kind of a limited reductionist version because there's great fruits we know that can come through the sharing of the word, especially if you have that special charismatic gift of encouragement when you show up these places. Yes, there still needs to be some people that stay behind that continue to fan those flames that have been lit by those people on the stage. Jane, what do you got?
Well, as we were discussing the vicious side, Christopher West actually came to mind when he was talking. He talks about, the
He's
rocket.
vicious, isn't he?
What?
He's
No.
vicious, isn't he?
No. I'm saying like he talks about that
Huh?
the viciousness of our passions, right? That
Mhm,
instead
mhm.
of going up like a rocket, it goes down into, and that would just, when we put leads to independence, others are means to maximize the maximizer's potential. So it's always
Mhm.
like it's going into me. I want you to maximize your thing so that I can be beneficial. And it was that inverted passions that he talks about, as opposed to the virtuous side where it's going out for others' benefits. And again, it's the glory of God, right? Building that kingdom. It's like, no, it's all about me, right? So that was just that, I don't know, I just got that picture of him talking about the rocket. I might be way off.
No, I'm hearing what you're saying. It kind of goes along the lines of what Corey was saying earlier about the sincerity of the gift, right? We
Mhm.
want to make sure that the gift is sincere and there isn't some ulterior motive that's behind as best we can. Doesn't mean that we can't benefit, that we don't experience pleasure ourselves in being a gift to other people. I mean, certainly, that's kind of a secondary effect. If that's the reason why we're doing it, we may want to, journal on that a little bit and look into that a little bit more. But of course, we're going to delight in the fact that we bring delight to other people in our contributions. But I hear exactly what you're saying. It's like we don't want to use people ever as a means to an ends.
Mhm.
And again, that independent, vicious side, using somebody as a means to an ends can be you can overlay that on top of all of the strengths, right? And again, that goes back to John Paul II's personalism, one of those tenets. Somebody can never be used as a means to an end. And the only proper response to a person is love, always. Corey, get a hand up.
Reading the virtuous side invites others to make a gift of their full potential and strive for excellence. To me, what jumped out immediately when I heard that is parenting. That's the ideal way to approach our kids, but it's also bittersweet. Being that, we help them and then we launch them and then there they go. So, but it is a nice, not just a nice thought, it's a very helpful thought to have that always going on in our minds as we're raising our kids. Anyway, just share that.
Yeah. And you're right, the bittersweet, because ultimately they must choose. And they don't always choose the way that we hope that they would choose. Sean.
Yes. So virtuous side of this encouraging others and to stimulate that personal development in each other and in, as a group is beautiful. And that's the virtuous side. It's so wonderful. And then I can see where in the vicious side, it shows up when, if you haven't been conscientious about who those people are that you're trying to encourage, if they have other things going on in their life, or it's against their personality or something, they can feel defeated. They can feel misunderstood. They can feel put upon. And that's where the vicious side can come up if we don't pay attention to the whole person. And then to, again, I'm going to use that word honor. It just keeps coming up in my mind today. Honor what they can contribute. And so that the engagement can still, on the virtuous side, can still occur without it becoming, that's where I looked at this and I thought, oh dear, how will this show up? And that's my thoughts. I thought, how would it lead into that? And it's like, if the maximizer is not fully honoring now, and we don't always know everybody exactly, but opening up the door to the stimulation, the encouragement, and I think what your bishop said to you was so empowering. And that's where the developer or other people come in, and the gates have been opened, ideas have been opened with the maximizer, and then you need the people with the other strengths that will come in and put that picture together. That's
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yes, yes. Indeed, we can see these things being paired really well. Sean, as you were talking out, Corey also had the thought, like, and I think about this dependence, and I think that the parent relationship can often be a very dependent relationship on our kids, even the maximizer side, and like the caricature. So this is a caricature, means extremes, right? We're dealing with the caricature is the father who is whether they're trying to get their son on the football team to like live vicariously through their kids, right? And so they're trying to, like, all the things that we fell short of as parents, we're trying our kids we're trying to fix in our children, right? Because and then the thought is, if they are successful, if they are, whatever we're defining success as, that means we can feel good about ourselves as a parent, or we can feel accomplished as a parent. I know I wrestle with that a lot. And that is probably the number one thought. My child needs to be perfect so I can feel like a good parent. It's like the number one thought behind my most vicious behaviors with my daughter. Veronica, I see your hand up.
Hi. So I was just going to add that, like looking at the maximizer's strength of, their commitment to excellence and to quality and to focusing on what's already there and the strengths, like those are all good things. So I don't think that saying that that's not a good thing, or that we shouldn't look at quality and excellence just because sometimes it's not achievable. Like, I think that's a noble goal. And I like what it says here under the virtuous side. You're inviting people to make a gift of their full potential and striving. So what you were saying about inviting, I think is really key, because I know that even in my own work, sometimes, I will strive for excellence and I will strive for quality, but then I think it was Sean that said at some point, I just have to say it's good enough, and then leave it up to the others to kind of figure out what the next steps are. Or like, I like what many of you were saying about developers. So, okay, so this is where we want to go. This is what we want to achieve. Or if it's a person that we're developing, sort of like, this is what, these are the talents they have. And now from what we have, how can we work with this? How can we really nurture that and help them grow, or help the organization grow, or whatever the project is. So yeah, I just like the fact that they kind of set the tone. I think that's where I see them. Like, they set the tone of where we can go, and then the other people can kind of come on board and help us figure out how to maximize and develop those things at wherever they're start from. So
Awesome. Corey's giving a thumbs up here. Perfect. Veronica, thank you for that. As we wrap up here, as we get into our kind of the mindsets, because again, the roots of the virtues or the vices comes from that thought. We think of Saint Mark the ascetic. When you sin, blame your thought, not your action. For had your mind not run ahead, your body would not have followed. I love that. So what are the thoughts? And so what I like doing now with the virtuous mindset is I like asking questions that can be thought finders, right? That can kind of guide our thinking. And I think this guides maximizers thinking towards that virtuous interdependent relationship. So number one, how can I invite others to make incremental gains in growth and achieving potential? How can I invite others to make incremental gains in growth and achieving potential? That's the first thing. Next thing, what gains do they want to make? All right, it's not necessarily what gains I think they ought to make or the potential that I see, but what gains do they see? What goals do they have? And again, this falls back on John Paul II's personalistic norm. Whenever we're approaching a person as an object to our end, to our actions, we have to always consider that they have, or at least should have, their own personal end in mind. They've got their own goals, they've got their own desires. So let's get curious about those. And then finally, are they open to receiving the potential I see in them? Now, for some reason, there may not necessarily be a the foundation for you to share. I was reading in a book, a great book that I'm reading right now. Michael Hall, he's one of the he's in like Catholic Christian coaching, Catholic Christian outreach. I think that's what it is. Christian Catholic outreach. It's CCO. It's the it's like the Canadian focus. So Veronica, your backyard there. But he wrote a book called Intentional Accompaniment, and he speaks about the importance of trust being the first part of the foundation that's there. Read this anecdote he shared. Was he was in an elevator and he was seeing this tender moment between his kids when they were talking on the phone, and as soon as they get off the elevator, this guy says, I've done all this, that was in the elevator with him, says, no relationship, no trust, says, I've been doing a lot of research, and you really should not be letting your kid hold on to the phone up to their ear that long. And then he just walked away. And perhaps this man was really inspired by love. He thought he was really sharing something very loving and protective for him, but there was no trust that was there. And so the response immediately was one of aversion. Get away. Who the heck are you? Right? So that trust is essential. That's there. Is the maximizer operating in a trusting relationship? Because then that's really primary before you can start telling people how they're going to improve their potential, I would say. Okay. Now we got a lot of coaches on this call here as well. Always keep that in mind. All right. The vicious mindsets that we have here too. You're here for me to reach my potential. Now I know nobody says that. But they may say things like, I hired you to do a job, go do it. And then the dependent relationship. What's wrong with you? Why don't you get it? Why are you making this kind of that? Why are you? There's a little bit of a self-righteous attitude that's there, perhaps. And this is only one of those things. But again, that dependent relationship needs somebody else to change. There's manipulation often in the mindset behind it, because they want somebody to change so that they can feel a certain way. All right. And then finally here for that codependent relationship with the maximizer, here today, gone tomorrow. Right. That's kind of what my bishop shared. And that codependent relationship where somebody can be really on fire and we can nod our heads and say, great job, give them 5-star reviews, but then we don't change. All right. Nobody really moves. We just collect our paychecks and we move on. I do mean that to be a critique. And this is something that of just, if that's what our ministry is, then it begs the question, who's doing the work of accompaniment? Because there's one thing that we've realized in our lopsided formation in the church right now. I say lopsided because there's a whole lot of intellectual formation, some spiritual formation, but there is no human formation, arguably no human formation going on. And I think the reason we shy away from human formation is because it takes well-formed humans to do it. Sticking around, like you've got to stick around, person to person. And so there's a demand that's there. It's a lot easier to anybody can go in and inspire, not anybody, but like you can go in, you can inspire, but the work, the transformation is really when you're coming alongside somebody. So that maximizer, they don't necessarily have to be the one that comes alongside, but I think it would behoove the maximizer to know who that person is that will come alongside, and then be able to connect that person that they inspire with somebody that's going to be able to come alongside and really accompany. And that's why we're raising up Catholic coaches at Metanoia Catholic. We want those people that can do that work. of efficiently coming alongside somebody and helping them to achieve their full potential, so that when they go and they get these amazing talks and they're inspired and then they ask the question, well, what do I do now? You've got somebody that can come alongside them and accompany them. Okay. I'm getting the hook here, so I'm going to get wrapped up. Closing thoughts, any last questions here?
I just want to mention, Matt, in the first sentence, and I think Corey had already said it and Veronica said something, but it's invite and incremental. Those words are very empowering and in situational. And that's really beautiful that you have those words in there. And so this has been a lot of fun today.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, folks, I think that we have squeezed as much lemon out of this topic as we can, or much juice out of this topic as we can. So thank you for being on the call, my fellow maximizers, even if they're not really high in the maximizer. Sean, you're the winner by far today. So folks, if you know a maximizer on your team, know that they are always going to be striving to rest in the next level, and help them to tame that, help them to create a space for them to be able to do that without it being overbearing, but also know that, say if you're somebody like me, high responsibility, and you feel overwhelmed by a maximizer, it doesn't mean you have to go and say, stop maximizing. Maybe you have to own kind of your own limits, right? And that's where the maximizer can even tame, I'm learning, can tame my responsibility a little bit here too, and realizing my own finiteness. But folks, if you're listening here, we are on, this is Metanoia Catholic Coaching Company. We've got a membership called the Metanoia Catholic Academy. All these people that are here are members of that Metanoia Catholic Academy. Some of them are even in our coach training program. We have the Catholic Coaching Certification Program. That is a certification program grounded in this Catholic anthropology and grounded in John Paul II's personalism and grounded in St. Thomas Aquinas's philosophy of psychology. So we know who the human person is as revealed through Christ himself and maximized and magnified through the lens of the church and taught through the great doctors of the church. We want to give people that design so they can build, maximize upon that design. Because when we do that, folks, we will be a church, a city upon a hill, a lamp on a lampstand, and we will be a place that people want to be and they want to stay. All right. So join us here in the Metanoia Catholic Academy. Go to CatholicCoaching.com to learn a little bit more about what we do. And we can't wait to see you there. You can also find our other podcasts we have. My wife and I, Erin, we do the Catholic Coaching Podcast, a whole lot of fun there. And what we do over there is we seek to make Catholic coaching and mindset coaching supremely Catholic and practical. All right. Thanks so much for being with us. God bless. Go maximize.